We're on. Tell me when you're ready.
And we are live.
All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Yellow Springs Board of Education September 13th, 2018 meeting. I want to welcome everybody here and ask if you haven't signed in that you're in attendance, if you would please do so. The purpose of the meeting is to conduct the business before the board. We're very interested in hearing from everybody and have set aside a time for community comments. But so that we can do our work productively and effectively, public comments, statements, and concerns are requested to be made during the community comments portion of the agenda. If you would like to speak, we ask you limit your talk to 3 minutes, and that when you do so, that no staff or student names are mentioned, because personnel issues are executive session material, for which you may request an executive session with the Board of Education to meet with us. Also, the board is legally obligated to protect student confidentiality and privacy by state and federal law, and FERPA, and the revised code, state revised code 3319.320. So with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Aida,
Yes.
Steve,
Here.
Steve.
All right, we have
Sylvia and Jim will be absent this
zero
evening.
absent. Various conferences, professional conferences. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and move forward with the approval of the minutes, August 9th, 2018, which was a regular meeting, August 16th, 2018, which was a special meeting, September 6th, 2018, a special meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, hold on. Any changes? Any changes to any of those minutes? All right, roll call.
A lot of minutes.
Steve 1,
Yes.
Steve 2,
Yes.
Aida.
Yes. All right, again, welcome. There are more chairs that can be, either these 2 chairs can be taken and moved here, or there's a couple more over there. Sit down. All right, we're going to add a 1.5. This got this on the agenda, and it's a statement that Steve is going to read.
Thank you. Okay. And good evening to everyone. I'm going to, right, this is a statement that I want to read on behalf of the board. For reasons both ethical and legal, as Aida just explained, the school board could not make any public comment on the progress of the district's 2 investigations of incidents of sexual harassment and assault or their findings while they were ongoing. Now that they have been completed, and now that former Principal Pryor has resigned, I want to make a statement here tonight on behalf of the board about this difficult episode. So let me start by reiterating that starting in March 2018, the board initiated 2 separate investigations of the allegations. One was an internal investigation required under Title IX and was conducted by Donna First, the district's Title IX compliance officer. The second was an external, independent investigation conducted by Kim Wilson, an experienced investigator in such matters hired by the district's attorneys. While this second investigation was not mandated by law, the board did not hesitate to authorize it given the seriousness of the allegations as we understood them. Let me also clarify as well that these investigations were conducted independently of one another. Both investigations come broadly to the same conclusions, and I want to highlight 5 of them here. No laws were violated by any district personnel or by the board, number 1. Number 2, in addition, neither the superintendent nor the board violated any board policies or procedures. Number 3, Yellow Springs Police did not notify Superintendent Basura about any allegations they were, or indeed are still, investigating. This in fact was confirmed by Chief Carlson in this week's paper. 4, The superintendent was not alerted to any of these allegations or incidents until March of 2018. He then notified the board immediately in an executive session. And 5, from that moment in March, the board and the superintendent took all of the necessary and appropriate actions to deal with the situation. Those are the 5 conclusions shared by both of these investigations. These are the facts of the matter. But let me underscore, so that there is no ambiguity about it, both investigations found that the superintendent and the board followed the district's own policies and the law, and we did so as quickly and efficiently as possible. Given these conclusions, the board wants to make clear that Superintendent Basora has the board's full and unequivocal support. From the moment he learned of the allegations, and again in March, he acted promptly, decisively, and with unwavering professionalism. We're all eager to learn what we can from this and to move forward with this new school year. The board, for our part, will take the reports and examine ways we can strengthen our policies and procedures still further in ways that will make them more effective. Yellow Springs schools themselves already have, I think, the most far-reaching, progressive educational programming about sexual assault, harassment, and consent of any district in this region, but we will also look at ways to work with students and faculty differently and more effectively around these issues. In fact, students have already requested a new way to communicate their concerns with teachers, and that has already been implemented. The superintendent will have more to say about these initiatives later on in the agenda. So let me conclude with a request. Come talk to us. These past 6 months have been hard for all of us who care about the schools, most especially our students. Rumor, innuendo, smear, vitriol don't make anything easier. So come talk to us directly. The superintendent and the treasurer are happy to discuss district business with you, and your board is eager to hear your questions and concerns as well. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to communications and reports. To acknowledge communication dated September 7th, 2018, which is a letter from Kara Haywood. And move into community comments 2.2 and recognize any members of the audience who would like to come forward and make a statement. And if you do so, please step up to the microphone so that everybody can hear you and identify yourself. And if you would, identify if you're a villager, township resident, or outside of those parameters.
I'd like to add as the timekeeper, I will yell minute, and that means there is a minute left. And so hopefully that'll help where you are and what you're saying.
Is it 3 minutes?
There's 3 minutes altogether. When there's 1 minute left, I'll make sure to say minute so the person knows that there's at least a minute left.
May I speak?
Sure.
You ever to figure out how to get you up to the mic?
Yeah, exactly. My name's Kathy Adams.
Up to
Why
the
don't you
microphone,
wait
please.
until you get up there?
Okay, my name's Kathy Adams, and my husband Dale and I,
You can, I just put
I'll
the
just
chair
stand.
there so somebody could sit there, but you can move the microphone so that it's more comfortable.
my husband Dale and I have 3 kids. I've attended Yellow Springs schools in my family, grown up here since 1963, and I have 3 kids in the school system, and our youngest is a junior. I'm gonna read, if I mean, business started already. Very difficult trying to write something for this today. And I want to say our family got the all-school communication from Maria Basora last Friday, and it made it sound like everything was done right and legal. Legal, that may be true in the most narrow sense. we lay people don't know about FERPA, Title IX, mandatory reporters, professional ethical codes of conduct for educational professionals, and Ohio ethics laws. I'm not an academic. I'm a nurse. I'm a mother. I've been a student. This is the worst thing I've ever seen happen in the schools in my lifetime. There's been a lot of harm, not just to students, but to our community. And even though I don't know these professional things, I do know right from wrong. And this isn't right. And I know you all are in the business of keeping our kids safe and us parents informed, and I feel very let down in that regard with this entire past year and now knowing about the previous year. We now know, no thanks to our schools, but to a lot of public information requests have been made by private citizens and to news reporters, that a student reported sexual misconduct by the principal's son to a school counselor on September 7th of 2017. The principal was the first person informed. If this is school policy, it needs to change. That's an obvious, unethical, completely code of conduct violation. Not the mother of the student was informed first, nor the police, but the principal, the father of the accused, who was principal of both their schools. This brave young woman reported 6 months before our superintendent and school board say they know of any alleged incidents of student sexual harassment and assault. How could you not know? In this tiny town, we now know, not through the schools, but through information requests made by the public, that the vice principal, the principal, 2 guidance counselors, the YSPD.
3 minutes.
And so I'm done.
I'm afraid so.
And the
There are a lot of
Green
people
County
here who may
juvenile
want to speak.
court system knew.
Can I give her my 3 minutes?
I
No,
I'll give her mine.
Just let her talk. This is
no,
important.
it's 3 minutes.
Somebody else had her.
started
Board
this
policy
rule
for a
when this
million
whole
years.
issue came
No,
up.
that's
No,
wrong.
no, no.
That is
Well, I may be wrong.
No.
But I certainly think that in this situation, you can at least let me read my scribbles that I have
Just
left.
keep talking.
Just
No,
keep
it doesn't work like that.
Now the damage has been
No,
done.
it doesn't work like this, Kathy.
The
You
letter
sat there
cannot
and said
hijack
you
the
wanted us
meeting.
to come to you, and here we
Yes,
are.
no, this is not coming to us to talk about this.
Yes, it
This
is.
Yes, it
This
is.
is occupying a public meeting.
No, she
to do the
isn't.
business
Then call
of
a
the
public
board.
meeting where we can come talk to you. All of
Schedule
us
a meeting.
together, talk to you for as long as we want, and you answer all of our questions.
We
Then
can't
make
answer
that
all of
happen.
your
Why not?
questions because, as we've already said,
I know you don't answer questions, but I would like to finish, and it only takes me about 1 more minute.
You know, it could take
Is
you
that,
1
isn't
minute,
that
and then it
justice,
could
isn't
take
that
somebody.
democracy? I mean,
no,
it's
democracy
not,
is
I know
following
you
the
have your
process.
rules, but I only have 1 more minute to speak.
Well,
Just,
And I've
She could be done by now.
Yeah.
just keep talking. Don't pay any attention to him.
The letter sent June 26, which I found out about 2 days after I got your all-school communication, was sent to how many people, how many families? We don't know. And it says, quote, significant harm. This is from Marta Besora as well, our schools. Significant harm has been inflicted on several current and former students. Several, we don't know how many. Former because they had to leave our schools. Due to harassment, this is quoting the letter, sexual harassment and bullying from the principal's son, and not from the principal's son, that's not part of the quote. Well, I know of 25 students that were interviewed, because I have friends and friends talk. So if 25 students were interviewed in our tiny school, that really speaks to our school's culture. Because we have small graduating classes, that's a lot of students, and a lot more students I know from students I talked to didn't speak up, that were victims of bullying and sexual harassment.
So now you've had your extra minute.
All right, the lack of communication and transparency
Kathy.
for our school officials, evidenced by the 626
Don't
letter
turn off.
that was not sent to all families, makes me not trust you to communicate
Kathy.
critically
Kathy.
important
This has to
information
stop.
to our school community. And this is the same critique you gave to Tim Pryor
You know
in his
what?
performance evaluation.
You're welcome.
I'm sitting down. Thank you to the teacher who
Well, you're
did
not-
take his
but you're
concerns
not.
to Jack Hazard, and to all the students who have been brave enough to speak truth to power. I thank them for bringing this to truth, to light.
Anybody else want to get up and speak?
Yeah, I'll speak. My name is Kate Mooneyham.
Wait till you get up to the mic.
My name is Kate Mooneyham. I live in the village. I used to have 2 students, but I have no students in school right now. It's hard to know what to say, but I'm just going to broadly say that everyone knows that there was a culture of protection around the student in question at the high school. The administration protected the student. The student physically assaulted another student with another student filming it on their phone with the intention to broadcast it and humiliate the student. And the student got a 1-day in-school suspension, which is 2 tiers below the minimum punishment for that act. The kids knew this kid was untouchable. No matter what they do, they had no power. This is unacceptable. I was warned last summer, summer before last, to stop complaining about the math program, which I was very vocal about, a very bad experimental program that was the principal's baby program. I was told that I was making too many waves, and if I didn't stop complaining about it, it would come back to hurt my son. This is unacceptable. And that was from a friend on the inside who said, they'll find a way to get at it. Don't do it. And they did. And I am just appalled that everybody sits here and says, well, nothing legally wrong was done, and we're giving him a letter of recommendation, and we're giving him his pay because legally he did. I don't agree with that. And if you write the line of law, morally, many, many wrong things happen, and people need to stand up in the school system and admit, this man created a horrible atmosphere in the school where teachers were told not to teach, where teachers were told how to teach, where teachers were writing positive reviews because they were afraid to say what they really felt about anything for fear of backlash. There was no anonymity. They couldn't say, I don't like the way you're telling me to teach this class. I don't appreciate the class that you've given me. Nothing. They were afraid to speak. I've heard this from students. And I don't understand why everybody's just sheepling along going, well, we can't tell you anything, but we found this and this and this, and it's all good. It's all good, people. We're making strides. I would like to see some admission that things were bad and that people understand how bad it was. That's it. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Leslie Shepard. Some of you perhaps read my letter recently about applying for the vacancy on the school board. I did not even get the courtesy of a phone call. This board, this administration doesn't even pretend to be interested in another opinion. They didn't even call me, and I believe I was very qualified to fill this. Don't even talk to you, don't even ask you, just sort of string you along. Oh, we haven't decided, we're still accepting applications. I communicated, I think, 5 times, and then I was told, oh, we picked somebody. And this was the second time I went through this process, and the other time was, at least they said, oh, we picked somebody we already knew because we knew we could work with them. So this time, they picked somebody who was the citizen in charge of getting the levy passed, because they know they can work with them. I have nothing against him personally, I've never met him, so that's not it. And I'm not here to talk about, oh, aren't I wonderful? I'm just here to say I am a professional, I was a teacher, a business person, I'm a native of the village, I lived away for a long time. I was a teacher of the year for the Juvenile National Correctional Association. Very qualified, very interested. I didn't even get conversed with over the opening. So there you go. Got to have your buddies in so it goes the way you want. And then the other question I do have is, if the events occurred in September, the ones at the high school, the sexual harassment or whatever assault, in September, and the board didn't know until March, is that correct?
This is a comment section, not a quiz section.
They won't answer you.
So I've
This is the-
I've already stated that that was in fact the case.
Well, thank you, that's all you had to say.
Okay, very good.
I don't need any smart aleck remarks. All you had to say was yes. I wanted to be sure before I continued. That shows to me a terrible lack of leadership, that the supervision does not know that this is going on for 6 months. They're unaware of problems of this magnitude. So right there to me, and then the mishandling of the levy, that to me is a crisis of leadership. Thank you.
Well, go take that front seat.
Hi, my name is Joanna Lazar, and I have a child in the district, 2 children, one school level, same school. And I'm just commenting that this whole situation makes me very sad, because I think that sexual harassment cases are very difficult to handle, very complicated, and that the laws that govern I'm a nurse and a midwife, and the laws that govern children and how you handle and disclose information are as complex and if not more so than the guidelines that we see in things like the Health Information and Privacy Protection Act. They are difficult to understand, but they must be followed. So I fully understand that there have been lots of rumors swirling, and that saddens me, but I don't think there was any way to stop that, because I think that procedure has to be followed to protect everyone. Secondly, I am sort of disheartened by hearing my fellow community members in a community as progressive as Yellow Springs seeming like they are so desperately crying out for blood. I feel like we are a more professional, compassionate community than that, and I would like us to look into using this very sad and tragic event as a catapult into a restorative justice model. Where do we want to go from here? Let's not dwell so much on what has happened, because what has happened is that lots of people have been hurt. Let's think about how we can move forward in a way that is compassionate and thoughtful and makes a wonderful example for our children, rather than what I have heard from children is that they're disheartened by the events that have happened, not so much by the response of leadership, but by the response of the community and the attacks of the community members against one another. That's all I have to say.
My name is Minerva Barker, also Athena Fannin. I have been working on this story for a very long time. One of the things that is very frustrating is when I put in public records requests, I get a lot of static that should not be there. I have received a stream of emails in which emails are just missing. I have evidence of that, and so when you redact, you have to redact appropriately. What happens after a while, because people talk to me about public records requests, is it starts to look pretty bad for the district, whether you intend it to be or not. I am a little frustrated because I have children that used to go to the district. They didn't stop going to this district because we got displaced. We pulled them out because we knew from the moment we came here in '97. So the moment our children were pulled out, we knew that there were problems. We don't want our children to be at risk for sexual assault and sexual harassment and retaliation. I have been told by my children that they had information about how things went wrong in this district, and they have never felt safe enough to say something until all of this came out. I have people coming to me with evidence, and they're going to keep coming to me with evidence, and I understand and I respect you guys have limitations. I'm not asking you guys to go outside of your limitations, but please do not treat this community like we are not smart enough to know what has been going on. You have to be as transparent as you are, otherwise this stuff is going to come out, and you guys aren't going to be trusted. And that's all I have to say.
Anyone else?
My name's William Firestone. I'm a former school board member and a step-grandfather of 2 children who go to Middle Salon, a school which I really love. And I would just like to see somebody take responsibility for what happened. I understand legally that maybe nobody broke any laws, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know, because all I know is what I know. But I do know that many people in the community were aware of this crisis as early as September of last year, and I find it sort of astonishing to hear you guys say that none of you knew till March. But be that as it may, I would really like to see the management team for the public schools step up to this and take responsibility. Thank you.
Hi, Suzanne Fogarty. So I had some questions, which I guess are not going to be answered, which I didn't realize in this forum. I live in the village, grew up here, 87 graduated Yellow Springs High School. My daughter attends Yellow Springs High School. So I will read my statement, and if there's still time left, I will ask some of the questions, which I can send to you, Mario, and maybe you should send me actual answers to them. So mistakes happen, and there's a universal tendency to avoid immediately admitting that we had made a mistake, have a lapse in judgment, or caused another harm. I work in a hospital where obviously errors occur and lawsuits are a worry. Because of this and the concern for the care of current and future patients, there are clear processes and procedures in place to follow when an error occurs that has the potential to harm the patient. The emphasis is not placed on blaming the person who made the mistake, but rather on determining how it occurred and how to prevent it from occurring again. From what I've seen, most patient and family anger is diffused by the reassurance that steps are being taken to prevent the occurrence of the same error on another person, and that those involved have the humility to acknowledge that they did something wrong and apologize for it. Ultimately, it makes us better practitioners and better human beings. In this situation, I'm not aware of anyone admitting that they made a mistake. Our kids need to see modeling of that behavior from the adults they are supposed to trust. More humility and less fear will allow for an honest assessment of what happened and reassure students and parents that school is a safe place and that those in charge can be trusted. Merely complying with mandated reporting is a pretty low bar, and I believe you can do better. So my questions are regarding the offered, this is in reference to the June 26th letter that was sent out to the parents of those students that were affected by this. So regarding the offer to make necessary academic accommodations for students who were impacted. So that was sent out in July, so I'm a little confused as to how that might have happened. How is this being implemented? Have teachers been notified? How is this communicated to families and students so that they knew that that was even an option really beyond just that letter? Regarding offering ongoing support for victims and their families from school counselors and the social worker. So who is the school social worker? That's one of my questions. Okay. Which counselors, would it be Smith and Morano? Do they have the time and the training to handle that type of situation and that type of counseling? How are the students and families being made aware of district resources? And to your knowledge, have any students impacted utilized these resources? Have comment boxes been added to the student restrooms for anonymous reporting? I'm not aware that they have, but maybe I'll let you know.
And I'll speak to some of that last piece later on. And actually, I want everybody to stick around. There's going to be a few pieces in the meeting that go through, but I think part of the important factor here is for us to hear you, but then you also to hear what we're doing. And I think that'll be part of the discussion later on. And I hope you stick around for my part. It's going to be another 30 minutes. So please stay here and don't just leave after the comment section so you can hear that part of the meeting, because I think that's an important piece. And Suzanne, the letter that I sent out to folks, did not go to everybody. They obviously they didn't go to the whole district at all.
No, I realize that.
And you know that. But what I will say is I have not gotten a single parent or family responding to me that they want to take me up on any of the services we offer in the letter. So,
do they know how that would be my question?
Well, we did. We asked in the letter, if you remember, it said contact us.
Mario.
So
Yeah.
I didn't get contact from any parent.
Starting a conversation right here. Okay, anybody else?
Amy Mariama. I live in a longtime resident of Yellow Springs, and I don't have a lot to say except that I just want to say to you that I'm responsible, and I think all of us are responsible. We are all part of a culture where situations like what's happened here in our schools in Yellow Springs are sadly not unusual. And in fact, this is easy compared to what some other communities are dealing with. And it's not because of any one person, it's because of a system and a culture that we have all contributed to with our complacency, with our privilege, and with the way that we raise and participate in this society.
Hi, I'm Nikki Lang. I live in the village. I got kids at school. I have so many questions, and it really kills me that apparently we can't do some sort of question and answer special meeting or something where we can try to actually talk and feel like we can hear why you made some of the decisions that were made or why some of the things were done the way that they were, because I'd love to hear your reasoning, your thought process, the way that everything unfolded, because I feel like we're only getting part of that, and it really does make everybody in the circle look incredibly guilty because we're only getting part of that. And I'm being told that there's no way to get that. And that makes me sad because I don't know how we will ever move forward without trust, open communication, and the ability to feel like not only will you hear us, but you will also come down and meet us down here in this really horrible place that we've been living. I have had kids come home for years telling me that they don't feel safe and that they don't feel they can go to people because they know that the principal was going to back that kid no matter what. So this has been going on for a really long time, and it has escalated now to where all these poor children will probably never be okay again. Really okay. They can have great lives, they can be happy, but I'm a therapeutic foster parent. I see what trauma does. I'm in the trenches 24/7 living with kids that sometimes do horrible things to me because of what was done to them, and adults failed them. And we all failed, and you guys failed. And the first responders failed. And we continue to fail because nobody's stepping up, taking responsibility, opening up and telling us exactly what happened. We've got information coming in from both sides. And a lot of it looks really true. And it looks damning to you and to other people involved. And you seem like you just want to say, well, we did everything right, woohoo, yes. And it's like, no, that's not near good enough. Not in this kind of situation. You're a therapist. You should understand this. And I can walk the walk and talk the talk because I'm a foster parent. And 9 years ago, I had a kid during the summer accused of sexual assault. You know what I did? I got on the phone to the cops. I called the cops myself. I met them at the door. I helped them every step of the way. No one kid is more important than another. None. I've walked the walk. I've talked the talk. Something messed up here big time. Thank God for people like Jack Hatter, Brian Hausch, other people that I feel I can come to when I feel like something like this is going down. Because right now, I don't feel like I can come to any of you because you're just sitting here spending most of the letter telling us how great you did. That's what I got out of that letter. We did everything great. No, children were hurt on your watch. And shame on you for not wanting to get down here and have an honest discussion and a give and take. And yeah, it would probably suck for you guys, and you know it. But once we got through it, then maybe we could have real changes. And I've got kids coming home telling me they don't feel safe. And I've got kids coming home saying it's not because of their parents, it's because they don't feel like they can go to staff or they don't know who they can trust. And that hurts so much because we came to Yellow Springs because of your excellent schools and because of your progressiveness, because we knew we would have children of other colored skin and people wouldn't look at us like we're weird. And it really feels like you have let us down on every possible level. And I don't know what to believe, but I believe that it is not all good and great like that letter in that statement says. Somebody dropped the ball more than somebody's. And it sucks that you will not step up and take responsibility and work to make it better. And it sucks that we're giving that man a letter of recommendation. What the hell? What about the next school? What about the next school? What about their kids?
My name is Tommy Rush Jolson, and I'm sorry, really emotional now because of that.
It's okay.
I moved here 12 years ago because of the schools. I had 2 children. They graduated in 2010 and 2011. And I didn't listen to them when they came home and said that the school sucked. No, this is Yellow Springs. This is supposed to be a great place. There's got to be something missing. And so I worked to afford to live here. I'm a homeowner, hanging on by my fingernails. And I've not been involved in the school board. I've not been involved in the village council. I got laid off in June and now I have time, and so I've been coming out to meetings, I've been coming out and I've been reading and I've been getting involved, and I have a daughter in Mills Lawn now. And I'm sad and I'm angry, not just at the school board but at myself. At myself for not listening to my children and not making the time then to step up. And I am glad to know that I'm not alone, that it wasn't just me. And I'm glad that I came here to hear this. And I'm also glad to know that I'm not the only one who doesn't have even a remotely clear picture of what's been going on. I thought I was missing something. I thought it's my fault that I don't know everything that's going on, but no, people who have been paying attention to this more than me don't know what's going on either. And so, yeah, while I have partially myself to blame, I also know that this should not have happened, not here. It should not have been this way 5, 10 years ago. It should not be this way now. There should not even remotely be an attitude that a child does not feel safe, that a child cannot report when they are being bullied and harassed, and that they believe nothing will happen. Not in this town, not here. I've been on the outskirts of the town for 10 years. And again, partially that's me. I'm an introvert. But at the same time, we need to band together and we need to fix this, and I will not let my daughter go into the high school the way things are now. And they need to change. And I think a lot of what we've heard so far tonight needs to happen. We need to have conversations and move forward.
Hi, I'm John Huntling. I have a son enrolled in Mills Lawn. I hope that after citizen comments, the chair will open up the discussion so that the school board will have an opportunity to respond, and hopefully if the chair doesn't do so, the school board member would make such a motion so that we can hear from all of you. I'm aware that the school district my understanding is that the school district has done some type of internal investigation, and it's my hope that as much of that as possible is released to the public soon. And also, of course, as people have been asking for some of the whys, it does seem that the agreement reached with Cryer, the former high school principal, is more favorable than we would expect, that he would be paid through And so we'd like to hear the reasoning behind that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, well, I am not going to open the floor for discussion. And we are going to move into schools in action.
So there are school session schedules today. so
Okay,
Administrative reports.
we're going into administrative reports then.
Just want to remind everybody, please stick around. I think we'll have some good information for you, I think, in probably the next 15 minutes. And there are some great things happening in our schools, and I want you to see them. And that's what you're going to see now.
Me? Okay. Good evening. Excuse me. So there are some really awesome things happening right now at Mills Lawn. We are still in our first 6 weeks of school, which is a very intentional time for us where we develop a lot of community. We follow the responsive classrooms model, and it's a great time for us to really establish the norms and rules. The kids help to co-create rules, and they help to create the culture of their classroom for the rest of the school year. So it's a great time for us to really get to know our kids and get to know each other. And there are lots of things happening, lots of clubs are starting to launch, like Girls on the Move, which is, we have 21 girls in 4th through 6th grade that are participating in that running club, and it's amazing, not only for physical fitness, but also for self-esteem and confidence building. Carla Horvath is running that club, so that's awesome. So lots of great things happening, but one of the biggest things that's happening right now is the all-school musical. So we do the all-school musical now. It's on a 3-year cycle, and part of that is because we need a year to recover after we have the all-school musical, because it's a big expense of energy and a lot of output there. And then we need a year of planning, and then we're ready to go again. So we launched the theme of the all-school musical, which is Lion King Kids, and we had an awesome assembly a week ago, and the kids are just super excited right now. They're auditioning, and we're starting to kind of figure out the cast, and it's just awesome. It's going to be an amazing play for us, our musical, but also we have lots of project work that's wrapped around it. Almost every project at every grade level is connected to the musical. So not only are we doing the Lion King, which is going to be fun and awesome, we're also bringing a lot of themes out of that play of collaboration, a journey, hero stories, knowing yourself, family. Just there's so much richness in that play that we're going to be able to tap into and really drive the experience into a deep level of learning. So we're really excited about that. The kids are super excited. It's going to be November 15th at the Robeson Center. So hopefully all of you guys will be able to come and check it out. It's going to be amazing. Another thing that's really, really hot right now is Camp Kern. 5th and 6th graders are going to Camp Kern on Monday, which is amazing. And I went into the 5th and 6th grade classes today, and I kind of did a pep talk and just like revved them up. And I didn't even need to say anything, because as soon as I said Camp Kern, they're like, ah, let's do it. So there's some nerves out there as well, but I've just told them we really need to just, our attitude, positive attitude, interest, will really dictate how the trip goes for you, and they're going to be able to create an experience that they'll remember forever. I still remember Camp Kern. I didn't go as a kid. I went as a high school counselor with some 6th graders, so I was really I love that, and I've been able to take kids to Camp Kern 4 or 5 times in my career. This is the 3rd time that Mills Lawn students have gone to Camp Kern, so we're excited. There's some people here that are going to be there with us, and you're not going to get very much sleep, so you better rest up this weekend. That's kind of what I'm going to be doing this weekend. And the great thing about this is there's absolutely no child that's prevented from attending for financial reasons. No child is prevented from attending. Our PTO supports this. We have parents that donate money to ensure that kids can go that might not be able to handle it financially. And on top of that, our Mills Lawn PTO put up the money so that everyone can do the zip line there. So the PTO at Mills Lawn deserves a round of applause. Let's hear it for them. Come on, guys. Every It's $10 per kid, per student, so it's not cheap, but every child's going to experience that. It's going to be amazing. And then just the last thing, because I think it's worthy of sharing as well, we are entering into the first stages of a partnership with the library, Linus Library, to put a story walk in our outdoor area. So story walk is, you have like 17 pedestals where they display different pages of the story, like page 1 and 2 and so on. So we'll be able to have another edition where at recess and after school the community can kind of access the story walk. We're also excited because we think we can display our project work, students writing, and really just use it as a way to display our work and kind of get more of that community engagement. So things are going really well. It's been a great start to the year, and just really excited about everything that's happening. Thank you. Any questions? Do you know what Hakuna Matata means?
I used to.
Come
That
to
was
the
a
play.
long time ago. I do have a
You'll
mask.
learn again.
I do have a mask. Okay, we are moving into Jack's report.
All right, so talking about some of the changes at the high school, some stuff that's going on at the high school. Last spring, we looked at some of the stress that our kids had, our seniors specifically had, students who were credit deficient and trying to make up credits through online stuff, and they were getting to April and May, and just a real stressful time for them. We were looking at the quality of our senior projects and kind of the range of how some were really effective and supportive and authentic and were great for our actual community and our kids, and then some didn't meet, I guess, the level of expectation that we hoped for. So we worked with the guidance counselors and we started looking at what we can do to support our kids, thinking about college and career readiness, thinking about how different college looks now than what college looked like 15 years ago. So in addition to changing the way A-Lab is run at the high school this year, we've actually implemented a senior seminar course where our seniors, any senior that's in our building, for 30 minutes a day, they go to the senior seminar course. And it's all around supporting their needs for college and career readiness. So it's differentiated for the FAFSA form, job applications, college applications, just anything that kind of falls into what the next phase of life looks like for them. There's also intentional check-ins for every one of our seniors. As far as each quarter, they're going to get a slip that shows where they are in relation to where they need to be for graduation. So if kids need these credits and these credits, it's just showing their progress. So it's the idea is we want to have a lot of frequent check-ins during that senior year so that kids aren't getting to the end of the year and being stressed about it. And we want to communicate that with families up front. And we feel like this senior seminar course is an opportunity to do that. In addition, the senior seminar course, another change is we are looking at the senior projects and how the senior projects have been formatted traditionally, and we're opening it up to some things, some different options for kids. So instead of just the senior project being a project, we're allowing 3 tracks for the different senior projects. So the first one is kids can choose a field of interest, and they can do additional community service in a committed field. So as opposed to actually building something, so building a picnic table, instead of building a picnic table, they can spend an additional 30 hours in a construction field learning the trade, much more than they're going to learn by just building a simple product. The second one is we're actually going to allow the students to do like a co-op or an internship where they can pick a field where they want, and again, instead of actually coming up with a product, they can do an internship in that field. So we think that, again, that's more beneficial to kids than just creating something. And then we're keeping the traditional senior project where kids that really thrive in that, and it gives them the opportunity to express themselves in different ways and pursue passions can still do that. But that whole process is now supported where there are check-ins essentially every day. And then the beauty behind this, roughly, I don't even know, maybe 40% of our seniors are not in the building every day for A-Lab due to College Credit Plus or whatever different reason they sign out. And some kids are here some days and not others. So this class is set up as a blended class where they can get part of the instruction in the curriculum when they're there, and then the other part is through an online class. So it's helping hopefully to expose kids to what online learning looks like for when they go to college. Moving on from that, we have a lot of major projects that we're excited about. I just finished up all my goal setting meetings with the teachers, and it was really exciting to sit down with the teachers and to hear them talk about what they're excited about and what they want to work on and how they want to improve. And we have two major kind of building goals around project work. One is that the projects become more authentic and that they're more authentic both to the kids and to the community. And then the second one is that we really increase the academic rigor in all of our project work so that it's not just something that looks nice, but it's really rigorous academically, and it challenges kids to think not just about the content, but also to think critically about themselves and who they are. Projects that we're starting with, the 7th grade, they actually started the year with Well Wednesdays, which is something we've never done before, but it's an intentional focus on social emotional growth in our kids. It's looking at the middle school model and trying to support the whole child. So essentially, instead of following a typical Wednesday schedule, our middle school kids have a very atypical schedule where what they do one Wednesday may be completely different from the next Wednesday, but it's similar to the first 6 weeks of school that the elementary does, where it's really focusing on the kids understanding themselves, it's understanding their peers, it's relating to them, it's building trust with adults, so that partnership there. And with the Into the Wild project, our 7th grade students this year are doing all of their training rides during the school day. So in the past, we've done training rides in the evenings, and then there's conflict with volleyball and cross country. And we thought if we moved it into the school day, it would give every kid an opportunity to participate. So what we're finding is we have a lot of bikes that are breaking down, and that's actually great. We're really delighted every time we get to go pick up a bike, because every bike that we pick up now, we're fixing, and that's one less bike that we have trouble with when we go on the actual trip. So it's going to make that trip that much more successful. We brought in bike mechanics to teach all the kids how to actually service their own bikes. So we're really looking at the whole child and this whole experience beyond just what our content standards say. The 8th grade, they're starting with the Race and Revolution project. So that's a project they did later in the year, last year, I think late fall. And what we've seen with our Into the Wild project is how much growth we get as a class when we do something like a big experience early in the year. So we've intentionally moved that up to try to bring the class together more in the beginning of the year. The 9th grade, they have 2 projects going on. The first one is our fall play is Romeo and Juliet, and the 9th grade is actually reading Romeo and Juliet. So Lori Sparrow Knapp is actually going in on the days when she doesn't teach, and she's co-teaching with Desiree Nickel. So it's trying to bring Romeo and Juliet to life, and it's looking at some of the crises that are highlighted in Romeo and Juliet that are still current today, and it's addressing some of those things in that project. And then there's a Health is Wealth project that is a math and biology project looking at gardening and growing crops and farm-to-table stuff. And then the 10th grade is looking at the opioid crisis. So instead of actually trying to tackle the opioid crisis, they're looking at the reasons behind it, and then they're actually looking at strategies that different groups are using to attack it, and they're trying to analyze those strategies for strengths and weaknesses. So a lot of really interesting project work, and the 9th and 10th grade, those projects, the Health and Wealth is repeated from last year, but it's a little different, and the other 2 projects are completely new. So exciting opportunities for our kids. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, we have a lot of travel opportunities. So in talking with our teachers about trying to create experience for our kids that they can't get anywhere else, it's just trying to move beyond our brick and mortar. So we have a lot of different travel opportunities. The first one is the Into the Wild bike trip. They leave in about a week and a half. Or just short of 2 weeks, and you'll see them all leaving out and biking. A really pretty incredible sight to see that number of kids in a bike ride together. Our 8th grade is going to Washington, D.C. this year. We are changing tour companies from the company we've used in the past. We found a company that we feel like can offer a lot more for actually about $150 a kid less. So essentially, we're going to explore this new company. The trip will go from driving all through the night to actually it's going to be 4 days, there will be no night travel. So we think it's a lot better because our kids, 8th graders, want to stay up all night. So when they get there the first day, they're so tired that first day isn't as great of an experience as it could be. So we're actually going to be driving, we're going to leave like super early in the morning and then arrive in DC kind of midday, and then it'll be a 4-day trip. This new tour company, in addition to being cheaper and no night travel, they can get us into the African American Museum, which our old company could never get us into. And that's something that was really important to us. They're also getting us into the Newseum, which is a newer museum, I believe, that we look at every year and we want to go to, and again, we were told we couldn't. And then they're allowing us to customize our trip a little bit, so we're going back to Arena Stage this year, and our students are going to see JQA, which is a John Quincy Adams show that Lori Sparrow Knapp is sure is going to go to Broadway. And essentially it imagines key confrontations between John Quincy Adams and some of America's most dynamic figures, including George Washington, Andrew Jackson, Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, and more. So in addition to actually seeing that show, the partnership that we established last year is going to allow our kids to go backstage. It's going to allow us to actually do a workshop with their actors. It's going to allow us to see their lighting design, and everything that goes into this show our kids are going to get to see. So, and that's all because we're going back and we're able to work with the same people we worked with last year, and we established those relationships last year. So band orchestra, they're going to be going on a trip to Chicago this year. So that's something we're going to try to keep going as in every other year, I believe. The Spanish club, or the Spanish class, we're trying to plan our first ever trip to Costa Rica as part of the Spanish class. So that's going to be a really small trip. I think it's going to focus on just 8 students the first year. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to have that be like a 7-day service trip. That's not so different than the EF trip that you guys took last year, but instead of just 2 days of service, it's going to be, I think, 4 or 5 days of service. So the real focus is going to be on service and immersion into their culture. So that's something we're excited about. And then for the first time in a couple of years, we're looking at a senior trip. So we do not have a date, a destination, anything. The seniors have expressed interest. They have actually a lot of money that they've fundraised over the course of the last 5 years. So the one destination that I've heard is San Antonio, but we're still getting feelers out here for that. And when I asked Nan Meekin why San Antonio, she said, I don't even think the kids know. They just came up with San Antonio. So there will be a proposal for each of those 5 trips at the October board meeting. So very exciting.
Excellent. Great, thank you. All righty.
Okay, this is my report. Every September, we get every school district gets their special ed annual rating. And so I always share that with you in September. So that's the main part of my report. Just on the top, I always also mention our new staff from the ESC, because we're a small district. We contract for a couple days a week because we wouldn't hire someone full time, and it allows us to share services with other districts by going through the ESC. And I used to work at ESC, and when you go to different districts, it's nice for your district to see you as a staff member. So I always try to remember to mention them again to everybody here. And so we do have from Clark County Educational Service Center a new school psychologist. And her name is Becky Violet. She's here 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, most weeks. And then Mindy Severinson, who used to be Mindy Wygand, who worked here years and years ago through ESC, is back, but she's through Clark ESC this time, and she's our occupational therapist, and she'll be here on Tuesdays. So I wanted to just recognize that they're going to be here. And the rest of my report is about the special education rating. And like I said, in September, I share this with you. Every school district gets this. The state has to report federally on their state, and they collect this information, so the school district is based on our reporting. Every school district gets this. And we get a profile in the spring, and then we get the rating at the beginning of the school year. So I just list out, here's our rating. We got the highest rating, which is meets requirements. It's pretty much like needs a lot of help, needs some help, needs a little help, or you meet requirements. So meets requirements is the best, and that's what we got. And so what goes into that, we're used to the compliance indicators, but they gave us a warning that some results indicators, they were adding more of those in. Now you'll see that we get points on all those, and there's a number of indicators which I listed out later, but it'll say that there's only so many out of a maximum. It was because our district is small, and sometimes we don't have the numbers to be reportable. That's what the NR no report would do, or no data kind of no findings. So the things in the compliance, these are things that are always checked. Are we disproportionately suspending kids that are a certain race or ethnicity as opposed to kids that are not, that are Caucasian? And they have a target from the state that they want everybody to hit, and then it's where our results were. We were definitely under that target, and we got full points. 4 points is the best.
that you can get, and then disproportionality among all special ed categories. Are we putting more kids of a certain race or color in special ed as opposed to kids that are not? Again, they have a target. We didn't even have enough to report because we're very small, but I don't think that is an issue for us. Again, they do it not only by all categories of disability, Ohio Department of Education disability categories, but also are we putting a lot of kids of color in the category of cognitive delay? You know, or are we putting a lot in the area of learning disability? They look by category too. So again, we didn't have enough to report, but I don't think that is an issue for us. They want us to report, we have to be perfect in our timelines. There's rules about this, and we are, so that's good. We have to be perfect in our timelines for transitioning kids from preschool to kindergarten, and we are. Every kid has to have a secondary transition plan, and we are 100% compliant with that. And then any timely correction of compliance, there was no late or uncorrected issues, because sometimes there's errors and you put in like, oh, we have an error we've caught. Timely, accurate data submitted, we didn't have any issues, so we're getting all full points on that. And the last is an IDEA, which is a lot audit finding, and they didn't have any findings, we didn't have anything unusual. The results indicators are the ones that are newer to districts. They look at students with disabilities and their proficiency at or above proficiency in math and reading. And the target is there that they want for the state. And I have to mention, you qualify as having a disability on a standardized test. So if you end up doing really well and catching up, you're probably not going to qualify anymore. In some cases you may, depending on the disability category. So it's kind of weird that they report this. So the target's low, but we definitely hit that target and exceeded it for both math and reading proficiency, which is good. Third grade reading proficiency, they want, they gave us our numbers, 4 out of 7 kids hit the target, and so ours wasn't reportable though because it's such small numbers because we're a small district. That's why it has NR as our results. Graduation standard requirements is the new one. This is an interesting one because it says to be determined. You see what we got. This means that when you have a disability, you're on a plan called an individual education plan, and you could be exempt from the consequences of passing state tests. Sometimes due to your disability, it wouldn't be an appropriate test for you, and you would either take an alternate assessment or you'd be exempt and get 3 points. Why that is important is because in 2021, they're going to start reporting that as a non-graduate and calculate it in all district report cards. So it's kind of like, wait a minute, they get an exemption because of their disability need, but now you're going to call them a non-graduate. So that's something that's going to come up in a couple years that's going to be really controversial, but there's our number based on graduating on standard requirements, meaning graduating and not being exempted at all from the state test consequences. So, they haven't even set the target for that yet, but it's coming. And then the participation in assessments, that is due to alternate assessment. Like I said, some kids get an exemption because it wasn't the appropriate test. Usually kids that have some real significant disabilities and delays would take an alternate assessment because you have the right to participate in state tests. Like some parents are like, I don't even want that right, but everybody's supposed to participate. So the kids that would take an alternate assessment, the state tells us we're only allowed 1% of our population to be able to take the alternate assessment. But then they say, well, don't keep it from anybody. But again, it'll hit our report card. So they'll just take anything over that and it'll hit your report card. So they're looking at the participation. You could tell we had 8 kids take the alternate assessment out of 469 total. And so we went over the 1% cap. So I will probably have to put in a waiver next year for us because we're over that cap. But we're not going to misplace a child with testing who needs to be, doing a different kind of test because of their disability needs. We're just not going to do that. We'll just take the hit. And then the preschool measures is something there's reporting that they do to the state, and that'll be coming down the pike as well. So those are all the things that we get points for that go into that rating. So If you have any questions, you can certainly ask me. I try to go over that quick because I know it's not all that exciting.
Still hard work.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions? Alrighty, thank you. Okay,
So don't go anywhere yet. We're like 10 minutes away, 5 minutes away actually. Not too much off, and then we're at that place, so.
Okay, I am going to be brief because I would really like to have a little bit more of your time next month when we do the 5-year forecast, because at that time, I would like to, I'd like to take the next month to work with Mario and the administration in looking at, we talk about segregating some of the cash balance, and I think it might be best, since we have a new board member, if I bring 5-year forecast to you with maybe some ideas that we have, and then if we want to implement that, I can either put that in the May forecast, or I can revise the 5-year forecast at any time along with having board approval, or we can, if you feel passionately about enough, we can have a work session. But I think that we have some things that we could definitely set some money aside for, so I would just like to work on that and present some ideas to you with 5-year forecast.
I'm sorry, did you say you want to do that in October or November?
I have to have the October forecast. I have to have the 5-year forecast approved by October 31st. So at the regular October meeting, I'll do my normal presentation of the 5-year forecast. But this time, I'll just spend a little bit more time on how we can take that cash balance and maybe segregate some of it out for future savings.
Great, thanks.
In the month of August, we didn't really have a whole lot to report on. We did receive all of our tax settlements and our property taxes that we get from the state. So I will be taking some of that money that's now sitting in our U.S. bank account that is only earning 0.01 or 0.02% and putting that probably over in Max Saver Plus, which is earning 2.13, which is higher than any of the certificates of deposits I have there anyway. So I'm going to move some of that money over and just probably house it in there for a while to earn some more interest. In August, I took all of the funds that I had advanced money to at the end of the fiscal year because they were in the negative. I took that money and paid the general fund back. Some of the grants that I've already recovered the money from, some I have to send out bills for, and then the lunchroom advance, I advanced $5,000 just in hopes that we would get some money back from our break-even guarantee from Sodexo, and we received over $9,000. So that will put us, I transferred $5,200 and then advanced $5,000, hoping we get back $5,000, we got back $9,000. So that's almost making us whole for the year, which is great. So that was good news. And lastly, the appropriations, which are on the board agenda that I just got done at 7:50 or 6:50. Stephanie hurried up and updated the agenda and got it online for me, and then I got my piece on there to just briefly explain. Yeah. This is me putting the budget in. The budget, just a reminder, and I don't know if Steve's been through this before. This is the real budget, and it's all these little teeny tiny line items. All you get is the overall picture, and the way that it's sorted out for the general fund is how it goes on the 5-year forecast. I will be probably refining that during October, putting it in the 5-year forecast, and bringing that to you to make sure that we have a good budget for the 5-year forecast, because it's just critical. But these are the appropriations today. I don't really have much to talk about. The only projects that I put in for permanent improvement are, we have been talking about possibly doing some roof repairs on the high school gym that need to be done probably this year or next year. So I did budget for that. We did, when we ordered a bus, we did not pay for that until this year. We paid for the bus out of the general fund, so that has been budgeted for, it was really budgeted for last year. Our poor little Title I fund keeps just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And so this year, Title I will only be able to pay for our Title I coordinator. Any Title I tutoring in summer school is coming out of the general fund this year to the tune of probably $25,000 to $30,000. So that really stinks that that's happening. So this is the appropriations, and I really don't have anything else to present.
Okay, so anybody have any questions? Okay, so we are looking for a motion for 3.2.
And we'll change that title to FY19.
Yeah.
Stephanie's new and she does not know that yet.
I missed it.
No, you're fine.
I think I just sent you a
missed it
message about it.
Okay, so is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, roll call.
Steve, 2.
Yes.
Aida?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Okay, 3.3, property and liability insurance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. It's funny.
Aida?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Moving on into the superintendent's report.
Okay. Pull up document very quickly here and then talk. So I guess I just want to start the conversation today. So there are 3 things on the agenda to talk about, and one is the annual, semi-annual bullying report. So as you know, we have we report that semi-annually. We post it on our website. All the confirmed cases of bullying that we have in our schools, we put it out there. And just so folks know, the definition of bullying is pretty broad, I think, when people talk about it, but when you look at the actual state definition, it's pretty darn narrow. It's repeated acts of, that kind of behavior that causes bullying. So if it happens just once, it's not considered bullying. It has to be repeated acts in the same student by, multiple students. And so, but before I do that, I just wanted to start by saying, thank you for coming. We really appreciate everybody who came here and, expressed themselves and shared opinions that, said some things that are absolute truth to you and important. And I appreciate it. And I want you to know that I heard you, I listened, and I think you had an impact, at least certainly on my thinking. I think on behalf of the district, I want to apologize, I think, to the entire community of Yellow Springs for what happened. You entrust us with your children, your most precious resources, and your most precious, gift that you've been given to take care of every day in school, and it's our job to do that. And I think, I think we failed in this regard. I'm a superintendent. Ultimately the buck stops at the top. And I'm the guy who ultimately, it happened on my watch while I'm superintendent. I'm just as unhappy and angry as everybody here, I think, about what happened. And what I want folks to know, though, is that, I wish I knew earlier. I really do. Because the earlier I would have known how to act on it immediately. And those of you who know my character, who know who I am, I would hope that you would give me the benefit of the doubt in that regard and understand that that's how I approach things. I want to say also that I'm reflecting deeply on what happened, and I think what really makes me pleased that you're here tonight, more than anything else, is I think about social media. And in fact, what I want to say about that is, last year, so every year we do senior lunches, and every year I meet with seniors, and Jack met with us last year with seniors, and we meet with groups, about 10 seniors every year in groups, and we have lunch, and we kind of do an exit survey and talk about their experience in Yellow Springs schools, try to figure out what they think we should do differently and make improvements. And this year was a little bit unique because of everything that was going on, and near the end of the year we met with the group, and we started talking about everything that was going on. We asked the kids questions. What would it take to come forward? Why were kids so quiet about what happened? And I wanted to get their honest feedback, And some kids started talking about social media. And when one kid brought up social media, the entire group of 10 kids started laughing, hysterically. They were laughing. And they weren't laughing for good reasons for the community. They were laughing because they felt like the community on social media behaved terribly. And our high school kids are watching. They're seeing our behavior online, and they're seeing what we do and how we behave, and they're thinking that that's the example of how we should behave in public. And I think we can do better than that. And I think we need to be better than that. Second example around social media, this year I was talking to some faculty, and one of the things we want our faculty to do is to be able to get on maybe Twitter more and do some posting of things that are happening in their classroom, really promote the school on social media a little bit. And our teachers are very hesitant to do it. And I don't quite understand why. So, Jack and Matt and I have been talking to them and figuring out what exactly is it that you're so hesitant about going on social media for. It's because the teachers see open discussion. They see all the websites where all of the vitriolic language is being used, and they don't want any part of it. Our teachers have told us that they don't feel supported by our community right now when they see that happening on social media. That's how our teachers feel. That's what they're saying. Don't trust me, talk to them. And that's what they've told us repeatedly. And so having you here makes a tremendous difference. Please come and see me face to face. My office is right across the street. I'm there all day long, 5 days a week. I live on 155 Allen Street. Come knock on my door and talk to me. These are your community members. They have phone numbers, they have lives, they have families. Go see them personally, please, and ask them questions. They are more than willing to hear from you. They want to talk to you. They want to hear from you. And I'm open and I want to have more ideas and ways that I can communicate better so you all feel like you're getting feedback and you're having a chance to share. But I really want to have face-to-face phone call communication with folks, and I think that's the best way to communicate. And it's the best way to really make an impact and make a difference. And so we want to listen, we want to make a difference, and we want to work together. But the only way I know to do that is if we work side by side, partnering on things. And social media and the internet is no way to communicate. It just doesn't work. And so let's try to do it differently. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing, what we've done since this terrible incident happened. And then I'm going to talk about what we're going to do. But incidentally, I also want to say one more thing about this that I think our board hasn't shared. So we are bound by pretty strict laws. So the police department's not bound by the same laws we're bound by. No other really public organization is bound by the laws that we're bound by. We absolutely have to protect student privacy at all costs. And so there's two pieces of that. Some folks, I think, believe that it's just about names. So we can't say student names, which means we ought to really release the whole report, right? Because we just redact the names, take the names out, you should be able to release the whole report. The problem is the law has two standards. Number one is you can't release names. Number two is you can't release any information that could be reasonably tied to a student. So that means saying that a principal got in trouble for X because his family member did this, that's really teetering on the edge of saying information that is absolutely a violation of public record. It's very much on the edge. And so I think that's part of the reason I think we can't do this. So all of those are factors that I think are affected by and have an impact on this. So as much as I think the board would love to release some information, we have two factors that are really important. We have to protect student privacy at all costs. Not just because of the law, because it's the right thing to do, honestly, as well. And because we have to be fiscal stewards of your money, which means we have to make sure we prevent lawsuits from happening and protect your resources as best as possible. And so those are two big reasons why what's happened. And I know it can give the appearance of hiding something. Believe me, we don't want that. That's the last thing we want. Especially when we feel like, at least I can say that I did everything I could at the time once I learned about it. Now there's some things we can think about in hindsight about what we could do differently proactively in the future. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think that's really, really important. First, I want to talk about the bullying report very briefly. So it didn't come up here. Okay, here we go. So there were no reports of bullying in the second semester from Mills Lawn School, which is, I think, the first time since we've been doing this reporting that has happened. At least they got, again, reported by the state definition of bullying. And there were 4 incidents at the middle school and high school. For those of you who are the first time seeing this, the area we find that this is the biggest challenge is middle school. And I think it has a lot to do with the age. It has a lot to do with where kids are in their development process at that age. And so that's why I think typically from grades 6 to 9 are the biggest challenges. And then usually after that we see significant improvements and growth in our kids. Which is why I think Jack is focusing so much of her attention at the middle school on wellness and development of the kids, for that reason. The second and third thing I'm talking about are facilities and also our goals. And so in talking about that, I'm going to discuss where we're going, and the goals actually, district goals and draft goals, they actually talk about all of that. So I'm just going to kind of go, if it's okay with you, down line by line of district goals, and hopefully I'll be able to address some of the the concerns. And what I want to say is, as we go through this, please, talk to me, push back on me later at some point or tomorrow, give me a call or send me an email and say, I think this is a terrible goal. After the meeting, you can certainly do it. I'll be here. I'll be here till midnight if you want to hang out and talk. And we can do that. So stick around, John. We can talk at that point, It'll be good. So this is goal number 1. So let's talk about that. So our first goal is to improve content learning in PBL. So this is kind of what Jack was talking about in terms of making sure that we're actually having rigorous action. And so I kind of highlighted the things I want to talk about. We sort of believe that in order to really make projects more rigorous, that we need to begin with the standards first and then kind of go backwards from there. What we've done before now is we've kind of started with our passions and interests, which is great. But what happens is sometimes the content learning gets lost in the shuffle and we end up doing more authentic, really cool things for the community, but the kids' content, rigorous learning may not be as strong as we'd like it to be. So that's something that's really important for us that we're going to try to work on. One of the other things we've heard from teachers with that on exhibition nights, it all looks great, it's final product, but teachers are spending sometimes weeks at a time getting ready for exhibition as opposed to actually doing some strong content learning up to that point. So we're going to focus on less wow factor at exhibition and more real show displays of learning. So what we're thinking about is looking at, okay, where did they start and then where did they finish? And something simple like that is a way to display that so parents can see the growth that the kids had in the learning and the process. The third thing in this is ACT is becoming increasingly important for our report card, but also for our kids. It's paid for now by the state, so all kids get to take the ACT for free on the school. And so we're going to start offering some ACT prep classes during academic lab or other times so kids can be successful, and that'll help them prepare best for college. Especially when you think about some of the concern about standardized testing and how that conflicts with a lot of what we're trying to do in our school district. So that kind of sums up our first goal. The second goal is, I think, where a lot of this comes in mind that we've talked about. So it's about growing a healthier district culture. If you remember last year and a couple years ago, we had some real challenges and a real focus on on racism in schools, and in particular on racial justice within our community. And so there's 2 pieces of this growing a healthier district culture that we're focusing on. The first is on racial and gender competence. So we're specifically focusing on race and gender because those are our 2 big challenges in Yellow Spring schools right now. We have a district cultural competence committee that was started at the end of last year, and they're going to recommend and plan learning opportunities for staff and students around race and gender throughout the year. We've already had our first workshop at the beginning of the school year before the kids came. It was a one-day overview on diversity and more focused on self-identification and understanding your culture. And then the next step is going to be looking at what kinds of things can we actually do in the classroom to practice more cultural competence in our work. We're going to create ongoing professional development opportunities to support staff through that on cultural competence. And one of the ideas was signing our staff up for Blacks in Yellow Springs tour. We think that's kind of an important idea just to get people out in the community and learning about our community in that respect. This is an idea that I've actually thought about very recently, and it's kind of come on the heels of me thinking about everything I've heard tonight, I think, from folks, which is that I think part of the healing process for our community is going to be, as a lot of you said tonight, in dialogue and working together to really combat the problem and solve the problem. So in that effort, we have the idea of creating a community film festival, if you will, for both our kids and adults in the community, where we dialogue, and the 2 films I'm actually thinking about, and if you have better ideas, we'd love to hear them, are Misrepresentation and The Mask You Live In. Great documentary films. If you have a chance to see them, check them. Anybody seen them by chance that's here at all? Those are both incredible movies. I really like them a lot. I was moved by both of them tremendously. And I think this is a bigger problem than just creating a policy. This is a cultural problem. It is a problem that goes beyond the school walls, that goes into the community. It is a huge problem. And so if we really want to combat this problem proactively, it's going to take a cultural shift with how boys and girls interact with one another, how men and women interact with one another. And that's not going to happen overnight. I mean, that's a real challenge. And so the idea is to show these films to our high school students, because the way they're rated, it's sort of on the edge of middle school, in school, and then have the kids dialogue with each other about the film and try to come up with some ideas about what we need to do differently within our schools to improve the culture around gender. And then we're going to show it in the community as well, so that parents can come be part of it, And they can bring their middle school students if they want, or parents can make decisions about what child they want to bring that's younger. If they feel like their kid's ready for it, then they can do that as well. And then hopefully the kids will lead a dialogue and discussion with the community around this issue, and maybe that will spearhead ideas and get a committee started within the school community to really proactively and long-term find some real solutions that are concrete that can really move the work forward. So I think that's the first big step, which is a huge point to this. The second one is, so I talked about that, community student group to address gender relationship challenges. We're adding suggestion boxes to each restroom for students to anonymously report information to administration that actually came from the students. So if you remember, I told you I talked to seniors at the end of last year once this issue broke, and the kids, we talked about this idea, why aren't kids coming forward about these kinds of things? What is the issue? And what they very clearly said was, if you put suggestion boxes potentially in restrooms, it's a private place, and you have paper there so kids can fill out, what's going on, they can give information, they can put it in there, and if the principal or some administrator in the district checks it every few days, then anonymously kids can report things, and we have at least a better chance of getting information in advance, and knowing that we can be more proactive in being able to address it quickly once it's brought to our attention. So that's coming. Actually, they're ordered already and they're on the way. They're supposed to be here tomorrow, I think. And so that's the idea, and we'll try to get them installed the next week in the restrooms and talk to the kids about it. We want to codify, well, first of all, we want to train our staff in mandatory reporting. We already have, so that's another thing we've already done. And I think it's important to note that we've already taken a lot of measures, and we're going to take more measures because we think this is serious and we're taking it seriously. So all of our teachers have engaged in mandatory reporting training already and learned about all the laws around reporting mandatorily. And we're going to do a second reporting for our support staff soon, of training for them. We're going to have a full Title IX training for our staff. Soon our principals and our administrators have already had training, and we're actually going to a second training day in Columbus, 2 weeks from today actually. And then we're going to come back and work with our staff. On top of that training, our staff is getting online training on Title IX and mandatory reporting requirements as well. We are interested in codifying and guaranteeing our grades 4 through 12 sexual and consent education curriculum. So some of you who have children who have been through this, you know that what we're doing with Planned Parenthood is really great work from grades 4 through 12 now. And our kids are getting incredible lessons. And the thing that's really disheartening in this is we feel like we have a consent program. We've been doing this with kids, and yet this still happened. And it's so frustrating to know that, and to really feel like we failed our kids, despite a lot of the work that our staff has done and our community has done. And so we want to codify it, make it a guaranteed curriculum, so that every student guaranteed from grades 4 through 12 is going to get this curriculum, is going to talk not just about sexual education, but particularly about consent and how we honor each other in our bodies in our interactions with each other. So you heard, I think, Steve talk about board policy. I'm going to go down to increasing racial and gender diversity of staff. So that kind of takes us off that topic that we're talking about here tonight, kind of the theme. And the other issue is that of racial and gender diversity of staff. One thing we know is really important is that if we really want to have a racially diverse community, if we want our kids to have a rich experience, if we want to decrease racism in our schools, we need more community members who are of different races. We need more students who are of different races. We need more faculty that are of different races and represent the kids. And we are largely doing poorly in 2 of the 3. Our community is getting increasingly white, and our faculty is getting increasingly white. Our students are the most diverse group of anybody in our entire community. And so we want to be able to make sure we match where the students are with faculty. This has been a goal of ours for a while. It's probably been my biggest failure, I think, as a superintendent since I've been here. But we're actually going to take it to another level now. What we're planning on doing is really kind of radical, and I'm just going to share a little bit with you about what we want to do. And so, because this, I think, is the only way we're really going to deal with this issue. We're going to establish a program with a local university, and we're in talks with Wittenberg right now. We're in talks with Antioch about this, that encourages students of color to enter the education program. So what that means is I'm actually going to go to Wittenberg. I'm going to go to Antioch. We're going to talk to kids when they're freshmen and sophomores, the kids that are in part of different African American fraternities or groups of kids that are part of programs, and meet with those kids where they are in their schools and talk to them about why the stats on on blacks in education and going into the profession, and minorities in education, and how poor they are and how horrible it is, especially in Ohio, and why we need more teachers of color than ever, more now than ever, and try to encourage them to get into it. Now, part of that's going to be potentially working with freshmen and sophomores to doing that, and then tying them into our school through student teaching, tutoring within Yellow Springs schools, so trying to set up a tutoring program here so that those kids can then come from there when they're freshmen and sophomores, work with our kids in our schools, and then by the time they're juniors and seniors, they can do the student teaching here as well, and then hopefully, by the time they're ready to graduate and get a job, we actually have a position available for them. But see, that's the biggest part too, because even if we get them here, which we have because we have a relationship with Central State, they get jobs by the time we have any openings at all because we're so small. So they can get a job very quickly in Springfield, Dayton, etc. very quickly. So what we're going to try to do is, and this is probably the most radical part I'm going to ask the board about, and we'll work on it over the next few months, is to create, I think they're hearing about this for the first time, to create 2 building substitute teacher positions. And what that means is these are permanent teaching positions for substitute teachers within the building. And we hire one for the Mills Lawn School, one for the middle and high school. And what we try to do is plug in those kids who have been in these programs with us into those positions, so that even though we don't have a licensed position for them at this point, they can at least come into those positions for a year or two, and we know they have a subbing job every single day in our classrooms. And then hopefully, when positions open up, we can plug those teachers in. And if we do that right, and if it works well, we will slowly increase the population of teachers of color within our school district. The second thing we want to do is to identify and invite current and recent graduates from Yellow Springs schools who are students of color of ours to be part of the program that I just described, and mentor them through college, where they come back and continue to work with us as tutors all the way through the student teaching process, and hope that we can get them to apply for the jobs. Now, of course, we have to hire the best candidate for the job, regardless of what their race is or their gender. That's our job. I mean, that's legally what we have to do. But we got to get a head start on this. And the only way to do this is to increase the applicant pool. And so we think this will help increase the applicant pool, and thus increase the amount of candidates of color we have that ultimately get hired and end up teaching our students in school. So I know I'm long-winded. I have one more. So the third goal is this idea of facilities. And so this is the other big issue, I think, in our community still. One of the things we learned, I think, from the facilities levy in May, and if you're going to fail that bad, you got to learn something, right? So one of the things I learned very clearly is that our community values being part of the process from inception. And so what that means is, instead of coming to the first meeting with the assumption that the buildings have a problem and present 6 plan ideas, let's come to the building with all the data and say, what do you think? Is there a problem? And then see what the community thinks, and then from there, figure out what we do next together. So one of the things, so what we're going to talk, when the board's talked about doing, is the following. And so the first is, try to, well, first thing we have to do is we have to get this permanent improvement levy renewal passed in November. It's a renewal levy, it's a 1 mil levy, it's no new taxes, it just has to get passed, otherwise we lose $150,000 a year starting January 1st. So that's, we have to find a way to get a levy committee to come back and do this again. That's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but hopefully they can do it. We need to conduct a second district-wide facilities assessment. The community said very clearly to us that that's what they wanted, that's what you wanted, and so we're going to do that. So I've shopped around, I now have 2 quotes back, I'm waiting on a third right now, and so hopefully we can kind of take that on. The third is to conduct a land use feasibility study to consider options for the future. So the levy passed, the community very clearly said we have affordability challenges in Yellow Springs. We can't afford a levy that high. And so the board, in their wisdom, thought, let's figure out other ways to fund the project. Maybe we can lower the tax levy by considering what we have to offer. Well, we are rich in land in Yellow Springs schools. We have 30 acres at the high school and 10 acres here at Mills Lawn. So what about all the unused land at Mills Lawn and all the unused land at the high school? Thinking about the Morgan Fields, which is everything north of the Mavecca building out there, the ESC, the Morgan building out there. And what happens, is it possible to sell the land for affordable housing to be built on those 2 potential plots? Is it possible to use it for commercial property? What's the possible use of that land? And then do a study of it, get the results back, and that's just one more piece of data that we can all consider together and figure out if that's something we want to do. Now certainly there's consequences, there's bad things to that as well, but we actually have to have we have to know what the data says in order to be able to do something about it. The fourth one is to consider alternative funding options to solve our facilities needs. So I didn't even know this was possible, but I'm learning right now that there are other options, potential ways to fund this. And one of the options is to actually secure private funding essentially for the school district to fund a project if we wanted to, that essentially is a loan through getting dollars from grants, energy savings from an energy project that's tied to it, and even potentially a loan that could help offset some of the costs as well. So that's an option as well to consider. None of these are maybe the best option, but we need to think about it and see what's out there and what's possible. And if you do it that way, the community wouldn't even have to have a levy in front of them to vote on. So your taxes wouldn't go up because it would be funded through a private venture instead. And then establishing a diverse representative committee to assess all of that data I just said, and that's a community committee, and to identify the needs of our current facilities based on that data. That's mechanical, structural, I think aesthetic is important, and I also think instructional is important. We can't forget about the instructional piece. We need schools that match the needs of our 21st century learners. And then propose a solution to the Board of Education for consideration. So, and then if the community and the board agree in terms of where we should go, that committee does, then let's start selling to the community and consider levy. And I think that's sort of where we would go moving forward. So I'm glad you're here tonight because there was a lot that I shared, hopefully, and you got at least a lot of information. Any questions, Board of Education? That's everything.
That's all? Oh.
We've been busy the past month.
So, right, so those are incredibly ambitious goals for which there's going to be a lot of work that's necessary. And if we add to that what Dawn brought up in her report about some budgetary planning that we need to do with carry forward money, we have to think about capacity and what we're capable of doing given the size of staff and the jobs that we all have to do. So that I throw that out unhelpfully just as a cautionary note. That's a very big agenda for and we're already in the middle of September. So I'm just gonna, I love it all, but I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah. Would you expect anything?
So what else is new?
Yeah, right, well, indeed.
But important to be careful and to pace ourselves because we don't want to get into something that sweeps us away and takes attention away from what we really need to be doing. So,
Yeah, well, and I want to go back to goal number 2 for a moment. I think it was number 2. One of the very first conversations I had with you when I joined the board was about the question of faculty racial and ethnic diversity. And I know this has been an issue trying to crack one way or another for a long time. So I think this, is a really interesting, creative, we'll have to look at the budget numbers, but this is a different way of approaching it than we've approached it in the past. And so I'm really keen to give it a try if Dawn says we can make it work in the budget.
What we've done before is failed. It's not worked.
Right, well,
So
that's
we
right.
do something different.
We
Yeah,
haven't.
completely different.
Right.
And it's a real problem. I think this is a major issue. I'm convinced that we really have to act on it and act quickly. It's a problem.
So I'm just curious, I mean, it's not just a problem here, this is a national.
Well, I think,
issue, right?
so I'm sorry to interrupt, but there was a story in the Times 2 days ago about educational results for non-white children with non-white background. I mean, so the research seems increasingly incontrovertible about how important this is to have a diverse faculty. And I also think Ohio is, I'm afraid, among the worst in the nation in terms of having teachers of color now. I mean, I just think we're swimming against several tides all at once in trying to find a solution to this.
Yeah, and so I was curious about, do superintendents actually talk about this because it is
No.
such a big problem? Yeah, okay.
I mean, not in Greene County.
Yeah, I'm talking
Yeah.
about the bigger
Yeah.
world.
I think,
not just Green.
well, I would hope so. But I've not been to a seminar where this is a topic of conversation. So.
And the last thing I'll say, to go back to goal number 1 for a moment, I do want people to understand that you and the board have been made heartsick by what has gone on since we learned about this in March. And that even as these investigations were unfolding and we were actually learning the facts of what happened and what did not happen, since much of the rumor out there was in fact not correct, we have already begun to try to address the things that we think we can address in some new and I hope more effective ways.
Well, and the other piece I want to, I think these Wellness Wednesdays are great, and I want to give credit to the fact that, we put boys and girls nights, embedded that into the class day so that everybody could and would participate, because there were always conflicts about people being able to do that, and those have always been based in student empowerment and leadership and health and wellness, and those have been going on for years. I think a film festival is a great idea, but I also want to say that has been something that has been going on for a long time. Those were student-led, student-initiated, and so forth. So, I think we've been doing a lot of that over the years, and I think we just have to keep doing it. It just unfolds, and there's new ways to do it. So, I want to appreciate all the work that's gone into it over the years as well. So. But this kind of situation does bring it back home about the importance and perhaps what else needs to happen and how it needs to happen. Okay, well, I think they're ambitious goals too, but I didn't expect that, so. Okay, anything else? Did you want to say anything? You don't have to, we've talked.
Well, it's sort of just in response to everything. Our current policy has failed everyone from victims, students, schools, community, and not knowing isn't an excuse. We dropped the ball. But and I'm pretty sure all my colleagues here, promise to make a coherent policy that will make sure that no one from staff to administration will be able to use their influence to allow any further damage, known or unknown, in any situation. So I really just was sort of furthering the concept that we're already working on, making sure that something like this preemptively will be stopped. And that apologies all around. And that's just me. Can't speak for everyone, but I've been listening, and the ball was dropped. I apologize.
All right. We are moving into the administrative portion of the consent calendar, 4.2 through 4.3. Is there a motion?
Your turn. So moved.
Second.
All right, anything to talk about in particular about this?
Adult lunches are going up.
Adult lunches, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Original free lunch.
All right, that's it?
That's it.
All right. All right, let's do a roll call then.
Steve, 1?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Ada?
Yes. Passes. Personnel portion of the consent calendar, item 4.5. There's a list of, it's always.
4.5, actually.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So moved.
Second.
All right. I just want to point out that we just have more and more teachers stepping up and coaching and being more involved than we have in a lot of years. There was a lot of years that it seemed like teachers were not doing that, and all of a sudden, there's a lot of people who are stepping up, which is really exciting.
Even, Margaret Swanson, who's our new public records clerk, she's coaching swimming, so, it's great.
She coaches what?
Swimming
Oh.
and volleyball, so.
Oh, look at that. We put that together. Huh. Huh. All right. Well, anything else?
Yeah. Just these are so we got some winter sports already here in September, which is great. You know, we're getting ahead of the game, which I think is super important. So.
Okay. Roll call.
Steve?
Yes.
Aida? Yes. Steve?
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. Moving on to board communications. Just announced the executive session on September 25th at 6 p.m. Green County Career Center report.
I must confess that I was out of town for the last Green County Career Center meeting, so I do not have anything to report, except that you all know that their levy is on the ballot for November, the Take Flight Initiative, the new school facility for the Career Center.
Okay. Any board member items? No? Okay, just a reminder that the Ohio School Boards Association Conference is November 11th through 15th, and most of us are going to be in attendance of that. And I'd like to take this opportunity to appreciate everybody who came out tonight and spoke to us. And I do want you to know that we do listen. It's important to us to have you here. So thank you. All right. We are moving into an executive session. And our treasurer pro tem, Sylvia, is not here, so will you?
Oh, I guess that's me then.
To take over.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, that. And we have to.
Motion second.
So moved.
Second.
So Aida? Yes. Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
I'm going to stick around if anybody has any questions for me.
Not here, you're not.
Oh, not here. I'll be outside. That's right. Yeah. So please,
8:47.
Or actually,
ask
or we
away.
could go somewhere else.
No, that's fine.
Okay.